Today I'm going to show you how to have fun with Ableton's scale aware synths and effects. So if you didn't know, scale awareness in Ableton is this setting at the top left here, which basically lets you define a scale for your song. Having this on by itself doesn't do anything until you activate this same flat sharp button at the top of devices that have it. So Meld in this case, since I have scale awareness on, whenever I pitch shift will snap to the scale that we set. And this also applies to stuff in the MIDI roll, but I'm just going to talk about the synth and effects in this video. Before we get into the crazy techniques, I want to show off this underrated synth Meld. So Meld has these two different synth engines, which they call bitimbral. Some of these are more musical and some of them are like basses or textures. And you'll see there's flat sharp cymbals on some of these, which means they're scale aware. Also, each synth engine comes with two separate macros that change depending on which synth you choose. So in this case, Swarm Saw will have a motion macro, which causes a bunch of built-in modulation. And then there's a spacing one, which kind of turns it into a chord. And it's really cool to mix and match these to see what kind of sounds you can get. For my second one, I might go with the new chord synth engine, which lets you set a chord shape similar to the stack device in the piano roll. And then an inversion. And right now you might think it sounds kind of flat and static. So where this synth gets more magic is when you open up this modulation matrix. You can map stuff like LFOs, envelopes, MPE, but my favorite part is modulating things with spread. So on the far right, you'll see the spread and stack controls over here. If you turn the stack to 3 and then turn up the spread knob, you'll hear that shit got wider and more detuned. This is because when we set the stack to 3, we have added 2 additional voices to each of these synth engines. And by default, spread is mapped to detuning. So one voice is going to have a detuning of 50, one's going to have a detuning of negative 50, and then there's going to be a voice with no detuning. I'm going to bring this down. And then by default, pan is also spread by 50. So we're going to have a left, right, and center. It's really cool to see what you can map this to get rich stacks. My favorite thing to do right off the bat is turn up the spread on pitch quantization. Which gives you single chord stacks with each MIDI note. So I might actually want to change this to be monophonic and then go to settings, and then we can turn up the glide on each of the synth engines. And right now it's set to portamento on both of them, which means it's going to just glide up. But if we turn on glissando, it's going to stair step to the next note. I think it's cool to have a mix of both of these, so I might have one of them on portamento and one of them on glissando. And now we might want to sound design this more, so I'm going to pick some filters, in which they also have 2 separate macros that change depending on which filter you take. Phaser is one of my favorite ones. And this gets really cool when you map the spread to these. So now you have different phaser values on each synth voice. And for the second one, I might pick filter, which is an analog model low pass. Now it still kind of feels a little static, so we're going to go to this LFO section, which has these 3 different columns. So one of them is kind of like a bass LFO that you can use to modulate stuff with more simple kind of waves. And then there's this LFO effects section, which we can use to apply all of these random kind of modifiers, so we can have both of these LFOs happening at the same time. And then we have one basic LFO, which is nice for adding stuff like vibrato on detuning or something. So now I think I'm going to start mapping stuff like the oscillator macros. Make this a lot slower. And also the filters. And something I also like to do sometimes is map some of these LFOs to the pitch quantization, so we kind of have like an evolving melody over time. I might leave that alone for this patch, but it is really fun to do on some songs. Now I think it'll be cool to maybe get an echo. And then a hybrid reverb on prism mode. Now I'm going to to Command A and Command G to group everything into a rack. Then I'm going to open up this chain window, and I just want to have a quick sub to put underneath, so I'm going to get the decrease for my instrument pack. And then my bass lock device, which automatically transposes any note you're playing to the sub octave that you define here. And one more thing about Meld, you can actually turn up this drive and it will apply distortion to each voice independently. And then you can also limit it here. Okay, now that we have a harmony layer, I think I want to add some kind of counter melody. So I think now might be a cool time to show off auto shift, which you might know is Ableton stock autotune. But for this example, I'm not going to use it on vocals. I'm going to start out with a vinyl distortion and an echo and a multiband compression at the end to protect our ears from what's about to come. So I'm pretty sure vinyl distortion is the only effect in Ableton that can generate noise without incoming audio or MIDI input. So if we turn up this crackle, we automatically have noise. So I want to change the echo to be on time mode, and I'm going to bring it to a super short delay time. I'm going to bring up the dry wet to 100. I'm going to bring up the feedback, and it's going to be really tonal if we take it over 100. Now in the modulation section, I want to change the wave to random and turn up the delay mod. And I'm going to multiply it by 4 and turn on the phase and sync. Make the rate eighth notes. And you can kind of hear that's a little melodic. So we can turn up the feedback a little bit more. Then in auto shift, we can turn on scale awareness, set it to high mode, and then bring down the smooth. And now our echo is self-generating a melody. So at this point, we don't need the volume on the crackle anymore, since the feedback is self-oscillating at this point. But say if you were to leave this project and come back later, you would need to give it more input again just so it starts running. So to make this more interesting, we can go to the auto shift LFO and we can have it modulate the formant. We'll change the shape to random and then set it to sync time. Maybe add a little bit of vibrato to make it sing. And there's two ways that we can change the pitch center. So in echo, we can either change the delay time, or we can shift it up in scale degrees instead of semitones, so it's in the scale of our song. And then if you wanted to change the tonality of it more, you can play with the feedback amount. But at this point, I kind of want it to be more talky, so I'm going to get an auto pan, turn up the amount, turn down the phase, and set it to sync rate in eighth notes. And then I'm going to get my multi-shaper device, just because I want the shape of the auto pan to change over time. And also be cool to have the vibrato kind of evolve. And maybe the smooth, which is how fast it's going to correct the pitch. And then we kind of want to space it out more, so I'll get a hybrid reverb and put it on quartz mode this time. Now let's see what it sounds like in the context of our harmony. It's cool because it sounds like it's singing, but we know it's like a self-oscillating echo. Now I think it'd be cool to get some scale-aware texture going. So I'm going to do the same thing with vinyl distortion. Also, I want to say shout out Chuck Sun, because I got this idea from analyzing the default project in Live 12, which has like a range generator rack. But I figured out this way to do it in like kind of like a tonal fashion. So I might just have it go like full force, honestly. Then I want to get a vocoder. There's really a lot of wiggle room for what you can kind of do here. But the main thing is you want to turn down the bandwidth to be like the lowest. Then I'm going to bring down the depth. Bring up the level, and then turn up the gate. It's going to sound kind of watery. And the tonality will change the most when you play with the range and the bands. But the fun comes in when we get spectral resonator and turn on scale aware mode and turn on quantize. And then we can change this frequency knob to find like a cool center. And then we can turn down the decay. So it sounds like kind of like colorful candy rain or something. And once again, I want to get my multi-shaper device, set this to be a really slow rate. And I'm going to want this to modulate the formant. That's already pretty cool. I might modulate the stretch as like the spacing of the harmonics. I might adjust the pitch shift. Maybe it could be cool to have the decay moving around. Maybe the frequency center. You can also get a shifter before on frequency mode and kind of play with the pitch center that way too. Depending on what kind of role you want this to play, so since we're going to have this as a more textual layer, we might want to shift it up a little bit. Maybe we can widen it so it's different on the right and left ears. Now we can use something like a gate to make it kind of clickier. But I also have this Clicks Max device, which is like a super sensitive envelope follower kind of thing. Which I made specifically to get more kind of ear candy sounds. It might also be cool to turn up the unison on this so it's kind of like chorusy. Then we can get spectral time to make it kind of like lasery, watery. You're going to want to make sure your dry wet's up 100% and your mix is up 100%. But then we're going to turn up this tilt. Might be able to have multi-shaper automate that. And stereoize it a little bit. I might add some multi-band compression. Just a little bit of OTT. Then in Grindley might be cool to add some sparkle, turn up the pitch. And I'm really feeling hybrid reverb today, and maybe more prism. Now let's see how this sounds in the context of our song. Definitely needs like echo or something. Okay, the only thing I think this spacey atmosphere is missing now is a vocal. I'm not a singer, but I think I need to show you AutoShift's true capabilities with my voice. So I want to show you how to make a cool chord stack. So if we get a MIDI track, we can get something like expressive chords. And on our audio track, we can go to this MIDI in section, turn on MIDI on, and set the input to MIDI, and then poly.
And now we have a chord stack from our expressive chords.
But I actually don't want to do it that way.
So you might know this plugin Harmony Engine, which adds harmony to your voice and the scale things set up here.
We can do the same thing with AutoShift. So all we have to do is group it into a rack, then open up this chain window, and we're just going to make a bunch of duplicates to make a chord stack. So on one duplicate, we'll shift it up 2 scale degrees. Then on another one, we can do 4. Then on one, we can do 7, which is an octave. And then another one be -1.
And now we have a chord stack. And I might want to map some of these knobs to macros. And map to all siblings. And do the same with vibrato. And maybe the smooth.
And now it'd be cool to add a knob where we can add more harmonies as we're singing. So if we open up this chain window, then Command A to select all the chains, we can drag out all these blue bars, then distribute ranges equally. And then we're going to drag all of the chains out to go to the end. And then on your bottom 4 chains, which are the duplicates, we can drag these white bars to create these volume ramps. So when we right click on this blue bar at the top here, you can map it to a macro.
And now we have a knob where we can slowly add harmonies. And it also might be a good idea to pan all of these voices.
And that's pretty cool. So now let's see if we can make that sound good on this song here. Okay, I don't think I'm going to make this into a full song right now. Like, I'm not going to add a drop or anything. But I do want to add one more kind of atmospheric layer. So I'm going to outboard my vocal into my hologram Microcosm, which this is not sponsored, by the way, but hologram, if you are watching this and you do want to sponsor me, I fuck with these pedals heavy. have a ton of take lanes that we could choose from. I'm just going to arrange some of these and make a quick intro. Okay, I don't love the vocal, but I want to show the result of everything we made. Okay, that's all I have to show for this video. Hopefully you got some inspiration of cool sounds that you can make and some ideas of how you can use and abuse the scale awareness in Ableton. If you fuck with what I do, get my max pack, get my rack packs, press all the buttons that make the YouTube algorithm happy and make my channel grow.